Thank you. Thank you for your nice introduction, sir. So, good morning to one and all who has joined in this webinar on PLC. So, if you go across world, anywhere in the world, definitely as an electrical or electronic engineer, you must be heard about the word PLC. So, PLC is nothing but it is a abbreviation of the PLC is the everybody knows programmable logic controller. So, we will see how the PLC was evolved from relay logics, what are the basic components, and what is the how to program and how it is used in an industry as an automotive tool. So what is PLC, or we can say definition of the PLC? So it is a digitally operating electronic apparatus which can be programmable. So it is that is called application program, which can be downloaded for the internal storage of instructions to implement the specific functions that include AND logic, OR logic, or sequence, or timing, counting, etc., to control through digital or analog input-output modules of various types of machines or processes. So this is the general definition of the PLC. And we can say easily it is a PLC is a digital computer designed for multiple input and output arrangements to suit high temperature ranges and immunity, electrical noise, resistance to vibrations and impact. So basically, it is designed to use at an industrial environment, because industrial environment, everybody knows, is a harsh environment. The temperature will be high. Lot of electrical noises will be introduced due to switching on and off of high power motors or machines, and vibration will be high. So the PLC is designed to work under these extreme environmental conditions. So we will see just the history of PLC. Actually, the PLC was introduced in the late 1960s by the company Modicon, especially for the General Motors as a relay replacer. So at that time, during that period, the automotive industry is looking for some alternate method, technique for wiring to replace the relay or timing circuits, because that rewiring was challenging and it was time consuming, and also there was a space constraint for hardwired relays. So this is the very thought of going for PLC. So from that also the PLC was evolved day by day, and by the introduction of latest semiconductor devices and digital electronic processor, then computer, then PLC has now evolved as a very important and plays a very effective role in an industries. So before the PLC was introduced or invented, the following devices were used to achieve the desired logic sequences. So relay with hard wiring. Nowadays relays are used, but it is very minimum. Rotary drum switch, it is for sequential operations. Electromechanical counter for counting certain how many bags has backed or how many bottles has filled, like that. And for timing and all, pneumatic plunger was used. Yes, you are well aware that these are the mechanical items, so that have its own disadvantages because of wear and tear, and the accuracy is also very less compared with the electronic devices, for as electronic timer or electronic counters. So because of the relay-based system, the complexity is high and hard wiring. So we have to lay the wire between one point to other point. Troubleshooting was the problem because if there is a bunch of wiring and relays, the troubleshooting was tedious. Space constraints was also there because in an automotive industry, there was lot of space constraints and very difficult to modify even for small change in processor system. If you wanted to modify something, then again we have to start from the scratch. So these are the disadvantages of the old relay-based system. But the introduction of PLC is performs all the functions like timing, counting, calculation, comparing, and logic such as AND logic, OR logics, everything, and processing of various analog signals for controlling the valves. So if the main advantage of the PLC over a relay-based system control system is that we can go back and change the PLC logic after we programmed it at very less cost. Only we can go the programming and modify in the software itself. So if you take the hardwire control system, then we have to remove all the wires and start from the beginning, which is more expensive and takes longer time also. For an example, imagine we have a light connected to a switch. So for simple understanding, so in general, the light operates under two modes, either on or off. This is generally used. Suppose if we require the light should on after switching on the button only after the time delay of 30 seconds. So in this means if it is a hardware system, so we have to procure a new timer and again the wiring has to be modified after introduction of the timer. But in PLC, we need not have to do any wiring. We can program the timing circuit inside. That's all. And the program can be downloaded. So this is the main advantage of the PLC system. So that there won't be any impact on space. So we need not have to touch any wiring. So everything logics functions are performed in that controller CPU itself, and it gives the outputs according to the logics. Then we'll go to the PLC parts. What are all the parts of the PLC? If you see, the first one is the power supply, then the processor module, which contains CPU and memory, IO modules, there is analog IO, analog input module, analog output module, and digital module means digital input module, then digital output module. Then communication interface for HMI, human machine interface, and programming. So these are the four parts, main parts of the PLC. We will see one by one. Power supply. So any system to work, we are well aware that the power supply is needed, which plays a very important role. As far as PLC is concerned, the power supply is for the total system operations. So it provides the internal DC voltages to the system components. Also monitor and regulate the supply voltage. For example, if you want plus 5 volt, plus 12 volt, minus 12 volt, etc. So everything is supplied by the power supply. And if anything goes wrong, it will give signal to the CPU that is something is wrong. And also it protect other system components which is connected or interfaced with the PLCs. So generally, the power supply requires power from AC source of 220 volt AC and 50 Hz. Nowadays, the PLCs will accept 24 volt DC also. But to derive that 24 volt DC, again we have to use the SMPS, which need 220 volt source from our side. And also the other important requirement of the power supply is it should able to tolerate 10 to 15% in line voltage conditions, because in an industrial environment there will be a lot of fluctuation in the voltage and frequency due to switching on and off of heavy inductive loads. So that will introduce surge in the power system. So the power supply should able to withstand these conditions. Normally it will be designed to withstand 10 to 15% in line voltage conditions. Then the processor combines a controller, that is central processing unit, and memory. Processor either modular type or compact type that is built into the system. So the speed and the memory capacity varies according to the process requirement or process input and outputs. So it is optimized for high speed control, not general purpose computing. This is very much important. This processor is optimized for high speed control. Then if we see the PLC scan cycle, suppose if we give start command, if the PLC is started, first it reads input from all the input modules, that is IO module. It reads analog input and digital outputs. Then executes the program downloaded in the memory, that is called application program. That depends upon the process or machine. Then it gives output, it generates outputs according to the program and communicate with the HMI, human machine interface, to read the set points or gives alarm if any goes wrong. Then diagnostic function also the processor takes place, whether the voltage is within the level or any watchdog timer has been acted or not, like that. So then again our next cycle starts. This scan cycle will be within 10 to 20 milliseconds. So very fast. So the functions of processor or CPU, so executes the application program, yes, manages memory, and monitors input and generates output as per the control logic program. It provides system diagnostic with status LEDs like power OK, this whether run or fault, battery low, like the LED indicators are there. From that we can see what is going on, whether it is working okay or if there is any problem. If there is any problem, the fault LED will indicate, glows in red color. Then normally in the processor will have run, program, remote selection switches for programming and operations. Then we will see the IO sections. If you see, this is the one PLC rack. Generally in PLC rack, first will be the power supply and second will be the processor. From next, there will be IO modules. It may be digital IO, digital input or digital output, or analog input or analog output. That depends upon the process. So this is called PLC rack generally. So this it is showed how an input is interfaced with the PLC. So this is a temperature element. So this temperature element is red color. From this below is bottom temperature transmitter. So that transmitter signal, which is in the form of 420 milliamps, fed to the analog input module. So which reads and gives the output according to the program. So this is the output section. So the after completing the reading the inputs and executing the program, the PLC generates outputs, and output will be in the form of either relay or PNP transistors or solid state relay. Anything may be there. Then we have to know about what is physical and logical rack. So this is the physical rack, what we have seen, that processor and IOs. That is the physical rack is a chassis is a physical hardware which houses all the devices, processor, IOs, power supply, etc. There will be one rack. Logical rack is an addressable unit consisting of 128 input points and 128 output points. That generally. So that will be in the software side for addressing each of the module to communicate each other. So in the logical rack, there will be a input image table and output image table. So every word, every bit will be written according to the input. So if there is a high signal, it will give 1 output table. So that is which module, that is 0 means output, I means input, that slot, which rack it contains, and the bit, that is a terminal number. So this will be our programmed that image table. So the data will be updated from here. Then it is transferred to the output sections. So another one of the advantage with the PLC is we can keep processor rack in a control room and the IO only input and output modules with communication modules in a separate geographical area. Suppose if wanted to, if there is a distance between 500 meters or 750 meters or 1 kilometers, so that IO module, which is called as a remote IO rack, we can keep it there and communicate with the optical cable or with RS-485 communication or Ethernet. That depends upon the distance. So this is the main advantage, because we need not have to put the processor rack there, or other PLC need not be installed. Only input and output modules can be situated there. So this is how we will see how a IO addressing, how a input output model addressing is being done. So as we are all well aware that every module has to be properly addressed, should be unique. Then only the processor will communicate with each module. So the addressing is to identify by the processor which module is located at which slot, so that the data can be read or write. So in general, the addressing elements include type, slot, word, or bit. So the type determines whether the input or output is being addressed. Slot, the physical position of the IO module, where it is actually, whether it is first slot or third slot, like that. Word or bit, this is actually identify the terminal connection in a particular IO module. So if you see here, so this is 0. O means the file type, that is output. O means output. 0 is the file number. Then the colon is the delimiter. Then that 0 rack number, which rack, whether it's rack 0 or 1. And the 1 is the slot number, where in the rack, the module, exactly where it is fixed. Then 0, 0 is the terminal number. Suppose 1, 0, 1 means it is channel 1, 0, 2 is channel 2, like that. So example, if you see I1 colon 27 slash 17 is the I is the input, 1 is the file 1, file rack 1, and 2 is the rack 2. 7 is the group 7, that is a slot 7. 17 is the slot channel number. So which is file number, rack number, and group number, that is slot number, and terminal number. So this how being addressed properly. So whether it is input or it is output. If it is input, it will be written by I. If it is output, it will be O. So if it is DI module, how the addressing is being done? If I000 means type is the I, slot 0, that is yellow color, that is slot 0, word is 0, bit is 0. This is input, you see, that is input is 0. If the output address, output 0, slot 0, word 0, bit 0. So if it is channel number 5 means the bit will be 5. Like that it is being addressed. So this can easily be understand. So this is the digital input model addressing, but this is analog input model addressing. But in the analog input model, only type, slot, word will be there. Bit is not used because that will be continuous function. Digital will be only on off. So this is continuous function with respect to time. So what are all the IOs in the digital type IOs can be introduced in the field with the IO module, sir? So the contactor, small indication lights or lamps, switches, solenoids. So that can be switched on and off. So these are the IO interfaces. You can see also here the limit switches and on-off selector switches, the push buttons. So the input from these are often digital in nature, either 0 or high or 1, either 0 or 1. These are generally we have to get it information from the field to the processor for implementing the particular logic. So this is the one PLC rack. So as we have said already, the rack first will be the power supply. Second will be the processor module, and other processor module slot will be 0. Power supply, there is no slot number. Processor module, generally processor module 0, slot number 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that, and which can be extended if it is modular design. So the major thing we should know, the power supply, that rack will have back plane. See, the rack will have back plane. The power supply is inserted, and all the modules, processor module or IO modules, will get necessary internal DC voltage from the back plane. So we will see how an input is being processed in a DI module. If it is an AC circuit, so this is AC circuit module are also used. That in nowadays in very rare application. Nowadays all modules interfacing voltage is DC only, because handling of AC is very difficult, high voltage AC. But in some of the application, 110 volt AC is also used. So if there is any input, suppose input is first, you see that yellow, next is the push button. So if the push button is pressed, it will get 120 volt AC will be there. Then bridge rectifier will be there. That from the bridge rectifier, that is AC is converted to DC. Then the voltage conditioning equipment, Zener diode level reduction, it clamps so that voltage will not go beyond 5 volt. So when the 5 volt comes, it is an opto isolator. So that opto isolator switches on, and 5 volt will go to the logic, then the processor. So the processor understand. So the particular limit switch or particular push button is pressed or on. So this way, every input is being interfaced to the processor. And also there is a the electrical logic section and power sections are separated by the optical isolator. So that is the main reason, because this is a high voltage side and this process side is a low voltage side. So high voltage should not enter into the processor side, which is very much dangerous. That's why an isolator is be used. So this is actually input module. So the line voltage, if you press the push button, that is the input field or any push button switched on, the status LED indicators will glow. That means the signal is received by the card, and it will send this information to the processor. So we will see how the output is being processed. In this output section also contains two parts. One is the power section and other is the logic section. So here it will be ulta. So there first power section will be that is input side, first power section, then logic section. But in output model, first will be the logic section and second will be the power section, because the processor writes the output, it generates the output. So the 5 volt DC from the processor and logics understand, then it goes to the isolator is switched on. So when the isolator switched on, the electronic switch becomes on, or the relay becomes on, or the SS solid state relay will give the output. So this way the input and outputs are being processed. In the case of 24 volt, so directly the output will coming to that 5 volt from coming to the logic, and from the logic it comes to isolator. Then isolator, these electronic switches, the relay will have 24 volt relay will get on. So this is the output module. So the output field devices, now it is lamp we have connected for this thing. So whenever the output comes, the lamp glows. And the one major thing in this, the internal AC outputs are limited to 1 or 2 amps only. So the if we wanted to start high loads, the interposing relay should be provided. That we will see in the next slide. And also, if any fuse blown, that LED module fuse blown indicator will glow. So this is the interposing relay connections. This is used for controlling larger load, because if you wanted to switch on a motor of 5 HP, 10 HP or 20 HP, the output from the digital relay card will be given to the interposing relay, that is called the control relay. From that control relay, the main converter will be switched on and the motor will start. This is for isolation, because the relay output relay card will have low current carrying capacity. So only relay or NPN transistor type or some solid state relays will be used. So we have to see what is discrete and analog. Discrete or digital means either on or off, or is 0 or 1. That is for discrete. Discrete is for switching on the motor, switching off the motor, switching on pump, switching off the pump, switching on the air conditioner, switching on the fan, etc., etc. But analog devices, analog in signal is continuous with respect to time, whereas digital signals are not continuous. But analog signals are continuous with respect to time, because it has to maintain the process variable continuously with respect to time. So here we can see how the analog input, that is the thermocouple, is being interfaced with the analog input module. So the thermocouple shall have the very low DC voltage that is proportional to the temperature in the form of millivolt. So that will be in the millivolt only. So that millivolt is being interfaced to the input module through the twisted sealed pair, and then that module will take care of further processing. So we will, normally it is programmed whether it is J type or K type, what is the ranges, so etc. are programmed inside the program. So whenever if we feed the thermocouple signal, the temperature will be displayed according to the range and set points. So these will be generally in the form of 4 to 20 milliamps in general all over the world. So the analog signals are in the form of 4 to 20 milliamp signal. Either it is analog input or it is analog output. Whatever may be the process, it may be a temperature, it may be a flow, it may be a level, maybe pH, conductivity, or turbidity, or whatever it may be. So all analog inputs values are standardized to 4 to 20 inputs and outputs. Both are standardized to 4 to 20 milliamps. Or in some cases, they will use 0 to 10 volt or 0 to 5 volt. But nowadays, this voltage signal are being not used, because the voltage, a lot of noises will be introduced in the voltage, and the voltage drop will be there if it takes to longer distance. But in as far as current form is concerned, there is no issue. Then we will next is the memory design. So the memory is a physical space inside the CPU, so where we can store the program files and data files, and all the logical operations are being carried out as per the program. So if you see program file, so that is the one pressure switch will be there, temperature switch. If pressure switch and temperature switch is on, motors will start. Or we can, if manual push button is pressed, the motor will be start. So accordingly, we can visualize the data file. You see, when there is no input, that is second limit switch, that is read as 0. So when the push button is closed, it is read as 1. So when, as far as this logic is concerned, when both is getting on, the output coil will be energized. So the memory design, so how much memory we need is depends upon the complexity of the program. So generally the memory will be in the form of 16-bit word. So this we are putting the Alan Bradley. There are in Alan Bradley there will be micrologics and SLC and control logics. So these are the all are PLC only, but due to very less, if the inputs and outputs are less, so the micrologics will be used. If the input and the outputs are in medium, for example, 200 or 300 tags or IOs are there, then we will use SLD. If it is more than 500 or 600, we will go with the control logics. So accordingly, the memory size will also increase. For example, if it is 1K memory, this are thousands of words, 1K means these up to 20 inputs and 20 outputs will handle this memory. So second SLC 500 controller, we may go up to 64K memory, that is up to 4096 inputs and outputs can be handled. If you go with control logic controller, up to 160K memory, that is 2 MB memory can be handled, and 1,28,000 inputs and outputs can be handled. So this depends upon the size of the process requirement. So if you see the memory design, so this is the one, right side is the one contact, so one coil. So thumb rule is 1K memory containing 1000 coils. Suppose one location per one coil. The memory location, one location per one coil. In that way, 1K of memory would then allow a program which will contain 1000 coils and contacts shall be stored in the memory. So as we have seen the input status table or file, so here it is explained, we are explaining how the input, the processor memory status table is being monitored and controlled by the processor. Suppose first you see the input is closed. So then that memory table, it became 1. So if the input is open, that particular or corresponding bit is set to 0. So this is how the memory is being managed. Accordingly, output status table. So if the bit is 0, the output will be off. First, you see the bit is 0, the output is off. If the bit is 1, the output will be on. We'll see the types of PLC. Compact PLC, modular PLC generally. Compact PLC means this is complete system is packed into one small case. So if you see the Alan Bradley, it is, we have seen that micrologics. So micrologics will have the one compact system. That PLC contains all the inputs and outputs itself, that is 14 inputs and 20 outputs. For it is small application. These for an example, we have a instrument air compressor system in our power plant. So that has only 20 inputs and 10 output. So in that application, we will use that compact PLC. Then modular PLC, which can be multiple analog and input and output cards can be inserted in a single rack. So the rack contains 8 rack, single rack and 8 compartments. So the model can be plugged. So the size and all depend upon the capability and power levels, etc. You see, so this is the Alan Bradley Micrologics PLC, as I have said already. This is the modular PLC. you can see that is, it is very clear picture. So that PLC is having both AC inputs and relay outputs. You can see, you can read from this, and there are indications. Power on, that is green color LED is glowing, run LED is glowing, then communication LED is also glowing, and the other side AC inputs. So whenever the inputs are present, that corresponding channel LEDs are glowing, that relay output LEDs are glowing. So when 0 means 0, it gives, it is, the output is now coming. So like that. So this is modular PLC for very small applications, machine controls applications. So this is a, sorry, it is a compact PLC. Oh, it should be not modular. It is a compact PLC. This is the modular PLC. You see, the first left side, from left side, until it is a Siemens PLC system at our plant. First is the power supply, and second is only is the CPU, and next is the digital input module. Next digital input, then next others are digital output modules. So this is the modular PLC which can be inserted and expandable also. So this is also a modular PLC system in Allen Bradley. This is called SLC 500 modular system. So this first is the power supply, that is red indication shows the power is okay. Second is the CPUs, and other two is the backup scanner. Here that PLC is a rack 1, it is rack 2 and rack 1. It is used for redundancy purpose. Okay, so both processor will be in on. If there is any problem, the secondary processor will come into picture. This is for bumpless transfer, we will say. So that redundancy concept will be introduced for very important plant operations. So that the plant should not be disturbed at any cost. You see here the SLC 505 CPU, the run LED is glowing, and the Ethernet ENBT LED is glowing, and fault LED is off. If there is any fault, that LED will glow. This is that model PLC, the analog input and output modules. First five is the analog input module. Next 3 is the analog output modules. So whenever if there is any LED is glowing, the corresponding input is read by the system, and if output LED is on, it gives, normally the output is being controlled and monitored. So this is the SLC 500 analog input output modules. This is other type of model which is called as compact logics IO model. So this other way. So for containing to handle large number of IOs, control logics plus compact logic system will be used. IO models will be used. These are the different types. That types are the depends upon the manufacturer. So the other thing is the PLC can be interfaced with the SCADA interface, so that the graphics screen will be there, will be developed, and the operation engineer can control the entire plan from that. They can switch on, that switch off, or put particular loop into manual or auto, whatever it may be. So that is one of the very big advantage of the PLC now. So I am giving, I have given some of the major PLC manufacturers. ABB is Allen Bradley, GE Fanuc, Delta, Siemens, Schneider Electrics. There are a lot of PLC manufacturers also there. But these are the PLC manufacturers. These PLCs are being used in an industrial environment across the world in general. So any queries? we will move on to other section, how the process is being controlled.
Participants, if you have any queries in this session, kindly raise. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next session.
சார் அடுத்தது எப்படி இது போகிறது சார் இது?
Okay, let me write.
வந்துட்டு வந்துருச்சா சார்? உங்களுக்கு தெரியுதா? ஹலோ
Sir, no sir. Sir, not visible sir, that
ஸ்க்ரீன் ஷேர் ஆகுதுங்களா?
no sir, இல்ல ஆகல. இது மட்டும் தான் தெரியுது சார். அந்த மைக் கம்ப்யூட்டர்ல என்னென்ன இருக்குன்றது தான் தெரியுது சார். என்னென்ன ஃபைல்ஸ் இருக்குன்னு தான் டிஸ்ப்ளே ஆகுது.
அப்படிங்களா? இப்போங்க?
இல்ல இல்ல, ஒரே நிமிஷம் சார்.
இப்போ பாரு சார், இப்போ பாரு.
Yes sir, now visible.
Okay. So then we will move on to the process control by the PLC. So now this is where the application of the PLC now. Okay. So we will move on to, sir, audible sir?
Yes sir, yes sir, audible.
Okay, okay. So now we will move on to the process control and how the process is being controlled by the PLC, that is automation. So when manufacturing any product, particular process has to be controlled to perform its task. For an example, when we mixing ingredients together, some of 1 or 2 or 3 ingredients are there, especially in painting industry, paint manufacturing industry. So we may need to control the proportion of one ingredient to another. How much? For example, this is 40%, that is 20%, that is 60%, like that. The temperature of the materials, how well the ingredients are to be mixed, and the pressure under which the materials are held. So these all the parameters are to be monitored and controlled. So if we go with manual, so this cannot be done in a consistent, proper way, method. So failure to control one or some of the above parameters will impact the product quality. So we have to make it good quality product and at the cheaper rates and with the safe working procedure. So these are the requirements. We will see how. So to control any process, we will have the control loops, that is either open loop or closed loop. So in a loop, in any loop, there will be one transmitter for the measurement of signal or process variable, and the one controller to compare and decide and to generate outputs. That is a CPU to regulate the PV, to give signal to the PV, and one final control element for adjusting or manipulating the process variable. Here it is, you can see the feedback loop. It is called as closed loop control. We will see one is open loop control. We will see in next slides, and closed loop controls. This is the feedback control. So when the process variable, you see temperature, pressures, or level or flow. So that is being monitored by the measuring means that transmit as the output. That gives control output in the form of 4 to 20 milliamps, and it go to the error amplifier. So the error amplifier that controlling means it shows compares the PV and set points, and the error signal is given to the flow element controller, or generally it is valve. Then valve will open or close according to the control signal. In this way, the set point of the process is being maintained at the desired level. This is the main thing. So next is the open loop control. In the open loop control, we can, for best example is our water tank level control in our individual house. So if the water tank level controller is provided in your house, what it does? So whenever the water level goes low, the motor is switched on. So when the water level reaches the high level probe, the motor goes off. So in this operation, there is no feedback. Just it is switch on and switch off. And the level varies between low level to high level. Low level probe to high level probe. So this is open loop control because it does not have any feedback. Sometimes open loop control requires manpower in an industry to control if there is any disturbance or any load changes. So this is the closed loop system, control system, which is being used in every industry, because closed loop control system doesn't require any human interface or human monitoring. You see, the input is coming from the water or paint or whatever it may be. That depends upon the industry. So output is goes through the control valve that is regulated by the level indicator controller. LIC is the level indicator controller. So in this, there will be chances for disturbances. Disturbance means if the set point can be varied. Suppose he wanted to maintain the level 50% in this tank, so the control valve will, the level set point will be put into the level indicating controller, and the controller output will try to increase, open or close the valve to maintain the set point. Otherwise, if you assume that set point is kept as constant, if there is changes in input feed or output load, then also the level varies. So in that time also immediately, when there is change, when there is difference between PV and set point is high or low, accordingly the level indicating controller will give the error signal to the control valve, either open or close. So this is the one closed loop control example. So in this way, there will be number of closed loop control systems that can be programmed in the PLC individually. So this is very on-off control system, simplest form, as I have said, for like our water tank level motor level control. In this also is, you see the furnace, So if the furnace temperature goes is below 600 degrees centigrade, the power relay is switched on and the heater will be on. If it is touches 600 and above, immediately the heater will be switched off. So here there is no feedback. Just it is a simple control. It is on-off control. The next is the proportional control, that feedback control. Feedback control means, as we have seen already, we have that process transmitters which gives feedback about the level. For this is the level transmitter, that is a PV is the process variable. Set point we will set as per our requirement. That level controller will give the output to control the feed valve. So here we will say how the controlled modes. So in the feedback controller, we have three adjustments. That one is the proportional adjustment, and next is the integral adjustment. Third is the derivative. So this is called PID adjustment or PID tuning. Tuning the loop in the beginning or while commissioning is very much important. Okay, now I will tell you. This is a feedback controller. This is a steady state controller. This is only with the proportional controller. So in the proportional controller, set point is equal to PV, but there is a small difference between set point and PV. It is not matched exactly. You see red line PV and blue is the set point. So this is due to offset, and this offset can be nullified if the integral constant is used. We will see how the PID values are being set. If there is any set point, immediately the controller action has to be done according to the speed. So here derivative is used. So everybody should carefully watch this, because slightly we have to go deep into this, how the PID controller PID values are being set in an industrial environment. If there is any disturbance or load changes, definitely there will be change in the level apart from the set point. So in this during this time, the controller has to act immediately to keep the set point, to keep the PV as much as constant. You see here, there will be chances for a lot of difference. Steam flow may change, or the control valve may change, or the input feed water input may change. So these are called as disturbances. So how to optimize the control action? Optimum control is achieved when the PV, that is called process variable, returns to set point as early as possible. So there is minimum amount of deviation, that is called overshoot. So whenever if there is any disturbance occurs, the PV may go high or go low, but it should be within very minimum, that is called quarter wave response. You see how if full cycle is 4 and next cycle it should go only 1. So that is called quarter wave response. It is a good measure how if it is quarter wave response, if we achieved, then we can say the controller is properly tuned. So here only the first curve is proportional constant only. Second curve is proportional with integral constant, so that offset is being nullified. The set PV is maintained around the set point. And third is proportional integral derivative, because that overshoots are there. So that should be nullified. Minimum overshoot should be there. So below you see the minimum overshoot curve. So that's like that. The right value, combination of the value are to be set. That this will be set as per trial and error method. and by the experience of the concerned instrumentation engineer. So proportional action, as we have said, determines how much final control element is open. FC is the final control element, is opened or closed when a change in PV is sensed. So it may be, it is called proportional band in percentage or gain. So proportional band of 100% is equal to 1 gain 1, 50% gain 2, 10% gain 10. There is integral adjustment. So this adjustment moves the final control element until all the offset is eliminated. We have seen there is a difference between small difference between set point and PV. So that offset is to be nullified. Accordingly, the integral time constant has to be set. So it is labeled as repeats per minute or minutes per repeat. Then derivative. So if the load changes very fast, then how the valve should act. So this is labeled as minutes. If rate is equal to 0 minutes, rate is equal to 1 minute, rate is equal to 10 minutes. Like that we can set. So cascade control, another one of the very important controls method we are using in an industrial environment is the cascade control. For an example, if you see, take a power plant boiler, the drum level, the feed water level in the steam drum has to be maintained at 50%. This is a mandatory requirement for any boiler. So in this, we are sensing 3 parameters. One is drum level, another is the steam flow, and another is next is the feed water flow. These 3 parameters are being sensed at a time. And a control loop called this type of cascade control is being used to maintain the feed water level or drum level at 50%. So this is very much because here there will be a lot of disturbances. That means there may be disturbance in the steam trial, or there may be disturbance in the feed water inlet flow. So whenever these disturbances are happening frequently, it is very difficult to maintain the feed water level unless otherwise cascade control is used. You see, this is PV1, that is the level controller. So that level controller is the primary controller that gives set point to the secondary controller, that is the flow controller, and that flow controller will regulate the feed water. Here, the level controller is not directly regulating the feed water, feed flow, whereas the secondary controller only regulates the feed controller. For an example, if an exit flow means you take the steam flow, if the steam flow increases, for example, if the steam flow is now drawing 50 tons, goes to 55 tons, the feed water controller should give command to open the valve so that 55 tons of feed water should fed into the system immediately without seeing the drum level. Here is the point. Why? Anyway, the drum level goes to decrease whenever there is stream flow is high, but that will take small time. The time lag. So if we allow that time lag to happen, then the level will decrease drastically. So before the level start to decrease, we are feeding the exact requirement of feed water as per the exit flow of, that is called steam flow. Thereby, if the input feed water and the output steam flow is being matched and the level is kept as constant. So this is the cascade control.
சார் ஸ்லைட் ஷோ இதெல்லாம் போட்டுருங்களா சார், கொஞ்சம் ஸ்க்ரீன் பெருசா தெரியும்.
அப்படிங்களா?
இந்த ரெஸ்யூம் ஸ்லைட் ஷோன்னு இருக்கு பாருங்க சார்.
ஓ
ஓ இல்ல
இல்லை வந்துருச்சு வரலைங்களா?
இல்ல வெளியே பழைய இது வந்துருச்சு.
அப்படியா?
இது க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிட்டு
இப்போ ஓகேங்களா?
இல்லைங்க சார், பழசுதான் இருக்குங்க சார்.
மாட்டேங்குது. ஸ்க்ரீன் இஸ் பாஸ்டுன்னு வருது. இப்போ வருது சார், ஏதாவது இப்போ பழசா வருதுங்களா? ஹலோ,
பழசுதாங்க சார் வந்துட்டு.
என்னங்க மியூட் ஆயிடுச்சு. டைம் ஆயிடுச்சோ?
இது பிடிஎஃப்ல இருக்குங்களா சார் இது? இதுங்களா சார்? ஃபீல்டு கண்ட்ரோல் இங்க போட்டீங்கன்னா வந்து
Shall we start, sir? It is audible.
Yes sir, audible sir, audible.
So sorry for the disturbance. So we'll go for next the final control elements. For any automation or in an industry, that should have the final control elements, especially the control valves. Sir, இதாக மாட்டேங்குது. மூவ் ஆக மாட்டேங்குது சார். ரெஸ்யூம் ஷேர் பண்ணு. இதுல தான் நிக்குது. Okay. So the types of final current elements are number of final current elements are being used, especially control valve. 90% control valve will be used. Then in some application, metering pumps, for example, petrol pumps or bottling plant, metering pumps will be used. Then dampers and levers in boilers. Then variable pitch fan blades. The electrically driven, so motor operated valves, and VFD, variable speed drives, then relays and switches. These are the types of final control elements. But control valve is the most widely used control element. You see, these are the control valves. So the first is the globe control valve with the positioner, the control valve with the motor, the blue color, the control valve with the piston on-off valve like that, the manual valves. The globe valve, common use, control butterfly valve, ball valve, gate valve, diaphragm valve. That depends upon the application. So these all valves will be used. So this typical pneumatic control valve. So that control valve will have the one control valve, the body and the actuator. The body and the actuator is being coupled through the bonnet. So the actuator is being operated by the pneumatic air. So the output from the controller in the form of 4 to 20 milliamps will be given to either electro-pneumatic actuator, electro-pneumatic positioner, which converts 4 to 20 milliamps into 3 to 15 psi, and then that is pilot valve. Then it gives that positioner will vary that 3 to 15 psi into 1 to 3 kg or 4 kg. That depends upon the valve specification. So these are the parts: diaphragm case, casing, diaphragm plate, actuator spring. Normally spring will be there, and for example, if you wanted to open the valve, the air will be given at the bottom, and the spring force, the air will be force. If air force is high, the spring will release. This acts, we have shown the 3 to 15 psi signal to open or close the valve. Here an I2P is used, which is used to convert 4 to 20 milliamp signal from the controller to 3 to 15 psi. Now the electromechanical positioners there, and now the smart positioner is available. So it doesn't require I2P, all will be combined in one unit, that smart positioner itself. So this is one globe control valve with positioner. So the controller, this shows the fail-safe position we can take. So if there is any problem, if air immediately goes due to any problem in the air compressor, the valve either has to open or close or fail, stay put. So like that of directions are given in this. So this is the fail-safe mode: direct acting, indirect acting, air to open or air to close, like that. That depends upon the process requirement. Fail-safe mode. So thank you. If there is any question, please ask us. We'll move on to the ladder logic just for 10 minutes.
So ladder logic programming sir.
Programming.
Already அவங்க
பண்ணியாச்சா?
பண்ணிருக்காங்க. ப்ரோகிராமிங் தனியா நேத்து ஃபுல்லா ப்ரோகிராமிங் தான் சார்.
So தேவையில்லையா? Okay.
அது வேண்டிய ரீசன்.
So do you have any questions or queries?
Participants, if you have any doubts, So feel free to ask. So sir is available.